Welcome to the Counselor's Soapbox video channel. Today we're continuing our series on drug counseling with episode number 5. We're going to talk about 3 closely related functions of drug and alcohol counseling: case management, crisis intervention, and education. Case management is administrative support of a client's therapeutic goals. It creates a positive outcome of the treatment plan and includes coordinating multiple people. In drug and alcohol counseling, the case manager is usually the substance abuse counselor. In mental health, there's usually a separate case manager. Larger agencies in drug and alcohol may have specialized people that serve the case management function. Many programs call this function service coordination. A definition of case management: activities intended to bring services, agencies, resources, or people together within a planned framework of action towards the achievement of established goals. It may involve liaison activities and collateral contacts. This may include the core functions of consultation and referral, but it is more comprehensive than just those 2 functions. Case management is a long-term function. It begins with the initial treatment plan, continues throughout treatment all the way to discharge, and may include transitional care from one level of service to another. It can facilitate both aftercare and continuing care. Crisis intervention is another counselor function, and it's an important one. First, we need to ask, what is a crisis? In general terms, if the client says it's a crisis, it is. Any acute emotional or physical distress on the part of the client, legal and ethical mandates, things like overdoses or withdrawals would also be a crisis, or medical emergencies might be included in the category of crisis management. What should a counselor do in a crisis? Well, first, the counselor needs to stay calm. It's a good idea to get help. Often bringing a second staff member into the group can be very helpful. You need to assess for medical emergencies and call for an ambulance if it's needed. Counselor also is required to be able to assess for danger to self, meaning thoughts of suicide or non-suicidal self-injury, such as cutting. Also, is there a danger that this client might harm others, or are they gravely disabled, so impaired that they're not able to provide safe care for themselves? Whenever possible, a drug and alcohol counselor would like to be able to bring in a mental health professional to assist in evaluating this client. Drug and alcohol counselors need to be aware of the thing called a lethality assessment. In the case that a client mentions they are having thoughts of dying, wish they were dead, or thinking of killing themselves, you want to assess what are the risk factors that they might actually act on those thoughts. One of the big risk factors is substance use, especially recent substance use. Binge drinkers, people who when they drink to intoxication, are 55 times more likely to attempt suicide. IV drug users are 14 times more likely, and other drug users are 10 times more likely. Suicide or suicide attempts are a bigger problem in the substance abuse counseling field than in many other areas. The 3 things that the counselor is basically looking for is, in addition to thoughts, is does the client have a plan? It's important to assess that plan. Is it specific, and could they do it? If the client's plan is to hold their breath until they die, not likely to be fatal. If their plan is to shoot themselves, do they have a gun? Or if their plan is to hang themselves, have they secured the materials necessary? Second, we need to know, do they have the intent? Many people have episodes of thinking about they would be better off dead or what if they killed themselves, but many of them will tell us that they don't plan to do it right now or they don't want to do it. But plan, intent, and then means, is it possible for them to do it? Other factors which may increase the risk this person will act on those thoughts include past attempts, having had a friend or family member who completed suicide. Gender plays a role. Men are more likely to use highly lethal methods, such as guns or automobiles. Women are more likely to use things such as taking pills, which, while they may not kill the person, may result in long-term health damage. Age is certainly a factor. We see an increase in young, teenage, and even recently younger suicide attempts, and at the other end of the lifespan, the older someone becomes, the more likely they are to attempt suicide. Other factors which increase the risk are their relationship status. People who are living alone or have recently broken up with a partner are at increased risk. Race is also a factor, though not as large as many of the other factors. Caucasian or white people are more likely to attempt suicide, but that doesn't mean that you can rule out anyone. Whenever possible, this assessment for how high the risk is should be done by a trained mental health professional. But should that not be available, it's important that the drug and alcohol counselor knows how to assess for these risks. Whatever the crisis, it's important to look at resiliency factors. What has kept them from attempting in the past? I've had clients say, I've thought about it many times, but my children are important to me and I couldn't do that to them. Also, you need to think about a safety plan. Is it possible, if they have a firearm, to have someone else take possession of that for a period of time? Can someone stay with them over the weekend? Do they have a support system of people they can call? Avoid asking clients to write a no-harm contract promising not to kill themselves. 30% of the people who sign a no-harm contract go home and attempt suicide. They sign it in your office, making the promise just to get out of there. The safety planning, what is the client going to do to stay safe, is far more important than their promise to you not to attempt suicide. Another thing which a drug and alcohol counselor needs to be aware of is the process for legal holds, sometimes referred to as involuntary commitment. In California, we have a particular set of codes. The numbers here relate to that. Those numbers can be different in other states or jurisdictions. A lot of people confuse the 5150 request for a hold as a designation of someone who is insane or mentally ill. The 5150 just says the person is currently acting abnormally or in crisis and needs to be evaluated. Once that is written and signed by a person authorized to write these holds, such as a police officer or someone, mental health professional working in a hospital, there is up to 72 hours for that person to be evaluated. That doesn't mean that they will be kept for 72 hours, but the person who's doing the evaluation has up to 3 days to make that determination. Often someone will come in on a hold, will be evaluated, and if a plan to keep them safe is created, they can be released before the time is up. However, if the person is not stable after 3 days, 72 hours, then they are placed on a 5250 hold. There are other holds that can be used beyond that, but that 5250 hold keeps them for a longer period of time. There are longer holds beyond that for things like danger to others, when someone is threatening to kill someone, where the person could be committed for up to 6 months. All of these limits on how long someone can be kept are designed to prevent abuse of psychiatric facilities by locking someone up just to get them out of the way. The grounds for which someone might be placed on a hold are danger to self, that's an intent to kill themselves, a danger to others, and that needs to be a serious danger. Throwing a book at a parent is not enough to constitute danger to others. Using a weapon to try to attack someone is. Gravely disabled is the person who is unable to understand how to use food or clothing, unable to provide help for themselves. And there's a slightly lower standard for a gravely disabled minor with children, someone under 18. Even though they know how to use food and clothing, if they refuse to do so, that might constitute being gravely disabled. A question that frequently comes up when talking about crisis situations: what about confidentiality? When do you need the client to sign a release or a consent to release information, and when is that not needed? The short answer is that in a crisis situation, the counselor can release those pieces of information necessary to keep the client safe. You could tell a medical doctor what kind of drug the person uses or any prescribed information. You wouldn't provide information about their relationship status or their legal issues. The function of providing education is another part of a drug and alcohol counselor's duties. The counselor might be providing education to three separate groups of people: clients, family members, and to the general community. That education to the community might include such things as the services their program offers, or basic information about drugs, alcohol, and the process of addiction. A couple of definitions of the counselor function of education may be helpful. Provision of information to individuals and groups concerning alcohol and other drug abuse and the available services and resources. Or client education, the process of providing clients, families, and significant others and community groups with information on the risks related to psychoactive substances, as well as available prevention, treatment, and recovery resources. Drug counselors need to be careful not to fall into the trap of thinking that education is something that's only done with children or teenagers. Education in the drug and alcohol field needs to happen across the lifespan. It includes education about prevention, education about treatment resources, recovery resources, relapse prevention, and education about the effects of drugs and alcohol on the family or relationships. Education is frequently included in substance abuse treatment plans. Education can be formal or it can be informal. Knowledge supports the treatment process. It's used to inform them and their support systems on resources available in the community. Education might also include educating the client and their family about available community resources. Those could include such things as Alcoholics Anonymous, maybe a schedule of meetings in their locations, Al-Anon, Lethality, Narcotics Anonymous, Smart Recovery, NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness, and there are other support groups. You might also educate them about other treatment providers who provide things your program doesn't provide. Additional resources might include sober living, private therapists who might be willing to work with the client on co-occurring disorders, the overlap between mental illness and substance use. Clients may need to know about food banks, housing and shelter options, medical services, local clinics. In our area, we have a group run by Fresno State that allows trainees to get hours and provides low-cost counseling called Fresno Family Counseling Center. There's rehabilitation services often provide counseling. Universities such as Alliant have a psychological system for providing services. And the community college often has a psychological services department where students can get resources and get free counseling while they're enrolled in the community college. When we think about drug counseling, we often think about working with someone to change their behavior. So why is education an important part of the skills that a drug counselor needs? Education is the preferred intervention for those in the pre-contemplative stage of change. Often, clients are sent to you by someone else, and they don't know they have a problem and aren't willing to change it. By providing them information, the counselor can be helpful in moving them through the various stages of change. Education is also an important part of relapse prevention and life skills. Education is about more than just the drugs. Education provided by a drug and alcohol counselor might include social skills training, parenting education, career counseling, grief and loss, assertiveness, and financial issues. It's important to relate these classes to how these things are affecting drug use and how drug use has affected these areas of the client's life. There are other topics a drug and alcohol counselor might provide education on. In order to provide that education, the counselor needs to first educate themselves. The topics could include health education, sexually transmitted diseases, HIV or AIDS, TB, hepatitis. Could also include life skills, stress management, communication skills, assertiveness, and refusal skills. Other topics include effects of drugs on the body and the brain, the effects of substance use disorders on emotions, behavior, and cognition, and the impact of substances on the family. Does the alcohol and other drug counselor need to be an expert on everything? Not necessarily. Education can be collaborative. Clients can share their knowledge. You can use printed materials such as curriculum or handouts. Over time, you'll increase your abilities and expand your scope of competency. Movies can be used, but it's important that they not become simply a babysitting service for your group. The proper way to use movies or videos is to show part of the film and then to process what has been seen with the group. You might need to come back and finish that movie at a later time. Some programs locally have used some of these videos as part of their curriculum, showing a part of it or all of it and then discussing it with the group. Experiential learning can also be helpful. Some programs take clients to an AA meeting or to a field event so that they get experience from actually participating in an activity or visiting a place. It's important to be aware of the concept of treatment-wise clients. Clients may attend multiple programs over time, and they may come through a given program multiple times. They become resistant to the education because they report they already know all of this. The challenge is to re-engage them. That may require presenting different material or presenting it in a different way. Some counselor educational skills are required. The counselor needs to be able to present information to the client, the family, and the community. You should be able to present information on drug use and abuse, present information on available drug treatment resources, keep the information culturally relevant. The counselor also needs to be able to present health education and life skills trainings relating that to drugs and alcohol. Stress management, effects of drugs on the body and the brain, the impact of drugs on mental health, prevention information, treatment, and recovery and wellness are all topics that the counselor might provide information on. In counseling, we often describe the services we provide clients as teaching them a list of tools they can use so that the client has a toolbox for situations. Counselors need to develop a toolbox for what they do separate from the tools they teach their client. That toolbox for a counselor might include a list of books or videos that you might use in your classes, a collection of handouts for groups, lists of recommended self-help books, pamphlets, websites or blogs that you could recommend. Some programs have set curriculum, but it's nice if the counselor also has some materials available as needed. What's ahead for the Counselor's Soapbox video channel? More in our Learning About Drug Counseling series, more drug education videos, and a series on mental health and wellness. If you've enjoyed this video, please click the like button directly below. For more information, please visit the counselorsoapbox.com blog, where you will find articles on mental health, substance abuse, and having a happy life. The David Joel Miller fiction and nonfiction books are available on Amazon.